The tavern stank of old beer and unwashed bodies, but Benedict Norwood had smelled worse in his years as a mercenary. And tonight he had coin in his pocket and a hot meal in his belly, which made him more content than he had been in months. He nursed his ale at a corner table, watching the card game unfold with the detached interest of a man who had learned long ago that the house always won, when the roar of outrage from the gambling table made every head in the room turn. "You cheating bastard!" A massive human with a scarred face lunged across the table at a wiry trader in stained leathers. Cards scattered everywhere. The trader scrambled backward, hands raised. "I won fair, Garrett. The orc woman is mine." Benedict's interest sharpened. He had noticed the orc woman standing silently behind Garrett earlier, her green hands bound with rope, her dark eyes fixed on some point beyond the tavern walls. She was young, perhaps 20, with the characteristic green skin of her people and small tusks that barely protruded past her lower lip. Her black hair hung in a thick braid down her back, and despite the rope and the resignation in her posture, there was something unbowed about the way she held herself. "The bet was 20 silver, Garrett snarled. "You said you didn't have it, so you can't claim the pot." "I said I didn't have it in coin." The trader's voice turned sly, "but I put up something of equal value. This." He pulled a crumpled deed from his pocket. "Farmland. 20 acres on the eastern border, worth 10 times what that orc bitch is worth." Garrett's face turned purple. "That land's probably cursed or crawling with bandits. No deal. A bet's a bet." The trader's smile showed too many teeth. "Unless you want everyone here to know Garrett the bold welches on his gambling debts." The room had gone quiet. Benedict could feel the tension thick as smoke. Garrett's hand drifted toward the knife at his belt, and Benedict sighed. He had been hoping for a peaceful evening, but old habits died hard. He stood, his chair scraping against the wooden floor. "I will buy into the game," he said clearly. 20 silver, one hand." Every eye turned to him. Benedict was not an impressive figure at first glance. Just shy of 30, with brown hair touched with early gray at the temples, and a face that had been called plain more often than handsome. But something in the way he moved, the old scars on his knuckles, and the calm certainty in his gray eyes made men reconsider their first impressions. "Table's closed," Garrett growled. "Then open it." Benedict dropped a small pouch on the table with a heavy clink. "Unless you are afraid." Garrett's face darkened further, but greed flickered in his eyes. 20 silver was 20 silver. "Fine. One hand. Winner takes all. The orc, the deed, and the pot." The trader protested, but the tavern keeper, who had been watching from behind the bar, intervened, smelling profit. "New game. Fresh deck. I will deal myself." He was a huge man named Torvin who ran the roughest tavern on the frontier with an iron fist and surprising fairness. Everyone agreed. Reluctantly, they nodded. Benedict took his seat. He could feel the orc woman's eyes on him now, curious and wary. He did not look at her. He simply watched Torvin's hands as the man shuffled with practiced efficiency. The game was simple enough. 5 cards each, one chance to trade up to 3. Best hand won. Benedict had played it 1,000 times in a dozen different languages across half the continent. He knew the odds, knew the tells, knew when to fold and when to press. Torvin dealt. Benedict picked up his cards without expression. A pair of 8s, a king, a 6, and a 3. Not promising, but not hopeless. Garrett went first, his face carefully blank as he traded 2 cards. The trader traded 3, too eager, too confident. When it came to Benedict, he traded 3 as well, keeping only the pair of 8s. The new cards came. Benedict's expression did not change as he looked at them. Another 8, a king, and an ace, 3 of a kind. It would beat most hands, but not all. He glanced at Garrett's face, saw the slight tightening around his eyes. The trader was practically vibrating with poorly suppressed excitement. "Let us see them," Torvin said. The trader went first, laying down his cards with a flourish. 3 queens. "Beat that, you!" Garrett's roar cut him off. 3 queens, I have a straight." He slapped down his cards. 7 through jack. "The pot is mine." Benedict had been watching the trader's face and caught the flicker of panic, the quick glance toward his sleeve. A cheat after all, but not a good enough one. Garrett had won honestly, or as honestly as Garrett ever did anything. "Wait." Benedict placed his cards down gently. 3 eights, and these. He tapped the kings. "Full house." Silence fell like a hammer. Garrett stared at the cards, his face going from red to white to red again. The trader made a strangled sound. Torvin leaned forward, examined the cards with a critical eye, then nodded. "Full house beats a straight. The pot, the deed, and the orc go to the stranger." "Like hell." Garrett surged to his feet, but Torvin's meaty hand clamped down on his shoulder. "You welch in my tavern, Garrett, and you will never gamble here again. You know the rules. Sit down." For a long moment, Benedict thought Garrett might try something stupid. His hand was relaxed near his own knife, ready but not eager. Then Garrett spat on the floor, shook off Torvin's hand, and stomped toward the door. "Keep the bitch," he snarled over his shoulder. She was more trouble than she was worth anyway. Would not work, would not speak, just stared at me like I was dirt. "You will see. Orcs are not worth the rope to hang them." He slammed out into the night. The trader followed shortly after, muttering about bad luck. Benedict calmly collected his winnings, the small pile of coins and the crumpled deed. Then, finally, he turned to look at the orc woman. Up close, he could see more details. Her skin was a deep forest green, smooth except for a few small scars on her forearms. Her eyes were a warm amber color, striking against her green skin. She was tall, perhaps 5'10", with broad shoulders and a strong build that spoke of hard physical labor. She wore a simple rough-spun dress that had seen better days and no shoes. The rope around her wrists had rubbed the skin raw underneath. "What is your name?" Benedict asked quietly. She studied him for a long moment before answering. Her voice, when it came, was deeper than he had expected, with a slight rasp. "Grusha. I am Benedict." He pulled out his belt knife. She flinched slightly, but he just cut the ropes binding her wrists. They fell to the floor. She rubbed her wrists slowly, watching him with wary confusion. "Come, we should go somewhere less crowded to talk." He paid Torvin for a private room upstairs, ignoring the knowing look the tavern keeper gave him. It was a small space with a narrow bed, a table, 2 chairs, and a wash-basin. Clean enough by frontier standards. Benedict gestured for Grusha to sit, then took the other chair himself. "How did you come to be Garrett's property?" he asked. Grusha's hands tightened on the edge of the table. "I was traveling alone. Foolish. A group of human raiders attacked me on the road 3 weeks ago. They sold me to Garrett for his farm. He needed labor." "You worked for him?" "No." Her tusks caught the lamplight as she spoke. "I refused. He beat me. I still refused. He said he would sell me to the fighting pits in the south. I said nothing. Then he brought me here tonight, said I was his stake in the game." She met Benedict's eyes directly. "Now I am your property." "What will you do with me?" Benedict reached into his pocket and pulled out the deed Garrett had signed over. It was a standard indenture contract, the kind used on the frontier where coin was scarce and labor was currency. Grusha's name was written in crude letters along with a description and Garrett's mark. It specified that she was bound to service for a period of 5 years or until the debt of 30 silver was paid. He had seen such contracts before, had seen how they were used and abused, had seen what happened to those bound by them, especially orcs who had no legal recourse and no protection under frontier law. Benedict looked at Grusha's face, at the wariness and resignation warring in her amber eyes, at the proud set of her shoulders despite everything. Then he very deliberately tore the paper in half, and in half again, and again. He tore it into small pieces and let them flutter to the table like snow. "You are not property," he said quietly. "You are a person. Go where you please." Grusha stared at the torn pieces of paper. Her mouth opened, closed. Her hands trembled slightly. "I do not understand." "There is nothing to understand. You are free. The contract is void. You owe me nothing." Benedict stood. "It is late and dangerous to travel at night. You are welcome to sleep here. I will find somewhere else. In the morning you can go wherever you wish." He turned toward the door. Her voice stopped him. "Wait." He looked back. Grusha was still staring at the shredded contract, her face a mix of emotions he could not quite read. "Why?" she asked. "You paid silver for me. You won me fairly." "No one should be owned." Benedict's voice was flat. "And you were not one. You were stolen, sold, and treated as less than human. I simply removed a piece of paper that pretended otherwise." "But what will you do? The deed the trader put up, the farmland that goes to you as well. Will you claim it?" Benedict had forgotten about that. He pulled the second deed from his pocket and examined it more carefully. 20 acres on the eastern border. A small cabin. Water rights to a creek. Fallow for 2 years but workable. He had been considering leaving mercenary work, finding a quieter life. The wars were winding down and he was tired, so tired of blood and screaming and watching young men die over borders they could not even see. "Perhaps," he said, "if the land is real and not a fantasy." "It is real." Grusha's voice was certain. "I know that area. It is wild country, but the soil is good. Creek runs year-round. There are deer in the forest and fish in the water." She paused. "It would be hard work for one person alone." Their eyes met. Benedict understood what she was offering, and he understood why. A lone orc woman on the frontier was vulnerable in ways he could barely imagine. She had no clan, no protection, no legal standing. Any human could claim her, abuse her, kill her, and face no consequences. At least with him, she had seen a moment of mercy. At least with him, she knew what to expect, but he did not want her gratitude or her resignation. "Think on it tonight," he said. "In the morning, if you still want to come with me to see the land, we will go together. But Grusha, you will be a free woman making a free choice, not my servant, not my property. If we work the land together, it will be as partners, equal shares in the harvest, equal say in decisions. You understand?" She nodded slowly. "I understand, but I do not know if I believe you." "That is fair," Benedict said. "Trust is earned, not given. Sleep well, Grusha." He left her there and found himself a corner in the common room downstairs where he could sleep with his back to the wall and his hand near his knife. Old habits. But despite the hard floor and the snoring of drunk patrons, he slept better than he had in weeks. Morning came with pale gray light filtering through dirty windows. Benedict woke stiff and sore, bought a simple breakfast of bread and cheese from Torvin, and was considering whether Grusha had fled in the night when she appeared at the top of the stairs. She had washed her face and rebraided her hair. The rope burns on her wrists were angry red marks in the morning light. She descended carefully, aware of every eye that turned to watch her. Orcs in human taverns were rare and usually trouble. Benedict stood and offered her half the bread. She took it with a nod of thanks and ate quickly, efficiently. They did not speak until the food was gone. "I will come with you to see the land," Grusha said. "After that I will decide." "Fair enough." Benedict settled his pack on his shoulders. "It is about a day's walk east. We should move." They left the tavern together into a cool spring morning. Dew silvered the grass, and the frontier town of Ashwick was just beginning to stir. It was a rough settlement of perhaps 300 souls, the last outpost of human civilization before the wild lands began. Beyond lay forest and river, unclaimed territory where humans and orcs and other peoples lived in uneasy proximity. They walked in silence for the first hour, following a rutted cart track that led east into rising hills. Benedict kept an easy pace, aware that Grusha had no shoes and the road was rough. But she did not complain, just walked with the steady endurance of someone used to hardship. Around mid-morning they passed a human farmer working his field. He looked up, saw Grusha, and his face hardened. He said nothing, but his hand went to the tool at his belt and he watched them pass with open hostility. "That will happen often," Grusha said quietly. "Humans do not trust orcs. They think we are savages, monsters." "Some humans are fools," Benedict said. "I have fought alongside orcs. I have fought against them too. They are people, same as any other, good and bad in equal measure." "You were a soldier, mercenary. 10 years in the border wars between Aldrich and Morn. I saw enough blood to last a lifetime." He paused. "What about you? How did you come to be traveling alone?" Grusha was quiet for so long he thought she would not answer. Then she said, "I had a clan, the Iron Ridge tribe in the northern mountains, but I fell in love with a human man, a trader who came through our territory. My clan found out. They gave me a choice, kill him to prove my loyalty or leave forever. I chose to leave. And the trader, he left me 3 days later, said he had never meant anything serious, that I had misunderstood." Her voice was carefully flat. "I realized then that I had lost everything for nothing. But I could not go back. So I wandered south looking for work, looking for a place, and found only chains." Benedict felt a surge of anger at the faceless trader who had used her and discarded her, at her clan who had forced such a choice, at every person who had looked at Grusha and seen only a thing to be exploited. But he kept his voice level. "His loss," Benedict said. "And their loss too. You are still here, still standing. That takes strength." Grusha glanced at him, something flickering in her amber eyes. "You are strange for a human. I have been called worse." A smile tugged at her mouth, small but genuine. It transformed her face, made her look younger and less careworn. Benedict found himself smiling back. They walked on. The sun climbed higher and the road grew rougher, dwindling to little more than a game trail. Forest pressed in on either side, oak and ash and elm still bright with new spring leaves. Birds sang overhead, and somewhere a creek burbled over stones. Around noon they stopped to rest beside the creek. The water was cold and clear, sweet when Benedict cupped his hands to drink. Grusha knelt upstream and did the same, then splashed water on her face and neck with evident relief. "How much farther?" she asked. Benedict consulted the crude map that had been included with the deed. "Another few hours, I think. The land borders this creek on the northern edge." They shared the last of the bread and some dried meat from Benedict's pack, then continued. The trail climbed into hills thick with forest. Once they startled a deer that bounded away in great leaps. Another time they found evidence of a camp, the ashes cold but recent. "Bandits?" Grusha asked, studying the tracks, "or hunters? Hard to say." Benedict kept his hand near his knife regardless. The frontier was not a safe place. But they encountered no one, and as the afternoon sun slanted golden through the trees, they crested a rise and looked down into a small valley. It was beautiful. The creek ran through the center, widening into a small pool before continuing south. The valley was perhaps 30 acres total, half of it open meadow thick with grass and wildflowers, the other half mixed forest. And there, on a slight rise overlooking the creek, stood a small cabin. It was rough work, logs chinked with mud, a shake roof that had seen better days. But it had 4 solid walls, a door, and a stone chimney. There was even a small barn or the skeleton of one and the remnants of a garden plot. "It is real," Grusha breathed. "It is actually real." They descended into the valley as the sun touched the western hills. Up close, the cabin showed its age and abandonment. The door hung crooked on leather hinges. The single window had no glass, just a wooden shutter. Inside was a single room with a dirt floor, a stone fireplace, and nothing else. Evidence of animals living there, droppings and nests, but no major damage. "It will need work," Benedict said, running his hand over the rough-hewn logs. "Chinking redone. Roof patched, door fixed, but the bones are good." Grusha was already examining the chimney. "This is sound, and look." She pointed to iron hooks set into the stone. Someone knew what they were doing when they built this. They walked the property as the light faded, finding the boundaries marked with stacked stones. The meadow was indeed rich soil under the wild growth. The forest held oak and pine, good building timber and firewood both. The creek was everything Grusha had promised, clear and fast and full of fish. By the time full dark fell, they were both smiling, talking over each other with ideas and plans. They could clear the meadow for crops, barley and wheat and vegetables. The cabin could be expanded, another room added. The barn could be rebuilt to hold a cow or goats. It would be hard work, back-breaking work, but it was possible. They made camp in the cabin, clearing out the animal debris and building a small fire in the hearth. Benedict had a little more food in his pack, and they ate sitting by the fire as night sounds drifted in through the open window. Owls hooting, the creek murmuring, the wind in the trees. "Will you stay?" Benedict asked into the comfortable silence. "Help me work this land." Grusha stared into the fire. The flames cast dancing shadows across her green face, glinted in her dark hair. "You really mean it? Equal partners, equal shares." "I really mean it. I am an orc." "Your neighbors will hate you. They may try to drive me away, or worse, you could lose everything." "Then we will face it together." Benedict met her eyes. "I am not a good man, Grusha. I have killed people, done things I am not proud of, but I am trying to be better, and I think you deserve better. Better than being property, better than being alone. If you want this, it is yours." Grusha's throat worked. Her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "Yes," she said, her voice rough. "Yes, I will stay. I will help you build this place. Partners." Benedict held out his hand. She looked at it for a moment, then clasped it firmly. Her grip was strong, her palm calloused from hard work. They shook once solemnly, and Benedict felt something settle in his chest. A rightness. A sense of purpose he had not felt since leaving the wars. "Partners," he agreed. That night they slept on opposite sides of the fire, wrapped in their cloaks on the hard dirt floor. But for the first time since her capture, Grusha slept deeply and dreamlessly. And Benedict, listening to her steady breathing, felt a strange peace settle over him. The work began in earnest with the dawn. They started with the cabin itself, the most urgent need. Benedict had some tools in his pack, a knife and a small hatchet, but they would need more. He made a trip back to Ashwick, leaving Grusha to clear the cabin and start a proper inventory of what they had and what they needed. The town received him differently this time. Word had spread about the card game, about the orc woman he had won and freed. Some looked at him with suspicion, others with curiosity. The merchant who sold him a proper axe, a saw, nails, and other tools quoted him fair prices but watched him carefully. "Heard you kept the orc," the merchant said as he wrapped the purchases. "She is helping me work the land," Benedict said neutrally. "Lot of people would not approve of that. Orcs working human land. Some might say it is not right." "Some people talk too much." Benedict met the merchant's eyes. "We are not bothering anyone, we just want to be left alone." The merchant grunted. "Fair enough, but you watch yourself." Garrett's been drinking hard and talking harder, says you cheated him, says that orc is his by right. Benedict felt a chill. The game was fair and witnessed. I know that, you know that, but Garrett's got friends and they have been drinking together, just watch your back. Benedict thanked him for the warning and headed back to the valley with his new tools, his mind working. Garrett was a problem. But Benedict had dealt with bigger problems in the wars. He would handle this if it came to it. When he reached the cabin, he found Grusha had been busy. She had swept the floor clean, repaired the door using rocks as makeshift tools, and started pulling weeds from what had once been the garden plot. She had also caught 3 fish from the creek and had them ready to cook. "You have been productive," Benedict said, impressed. "I do not like to be idle." Grusha took the axe from him, testing its weight and balance with an expert eye. "This is good. With this, we can start felling trees for the barn." They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks. Up with the sun, working until dark, falling into exhausted sleep, and rising to do it again. Benedict felled trees and shaped logs while Grusha chinked the gaps in the cabin walls with fresh mud and moss. Together they patched the roof, replacing rotted shakes with new splits. They cleared the garden plot and planted the seeds Benedict bought in town. Beans and squash and turnips, late for spring but not too late. The work was hard, harder than anything Benedict had done in years. His hands blistered, then calloused. His shoulders ached from swinging the axe. But there was a satisfaction in it, seeing the cabin transform day by day from a ruin into a home, seeing the garden rows planted neat and watered, seeing the barn take shape, frame by frame. Grusha worked as hard as he did, never complaining. She was stronger than she looked, capable of carrying logs he struggled with, splitting wood with steady, powerful strokes. But more than that, she was clever. She solved problems, designed better ways to do things, saw angles he missed. They talked as they worked, at first just practical matters. Then, gradually, more. She told him about growing up in the Iron Ridge clan, about learning to hunt and track, about the harsh beauty of the northern mountains. He told her about his childhood in a fishing village, about joining the mercenaries at 16 to escape poverty, about the wars and the friends he had lost. "You regret it?" Grusha asked one evening as they sat by the creek after a long day of work. "The fighting." Benedict was quiet for a long moment. "I regret what it made me, the things I had to do, but I do not regret surviving, and everything I was before brought me here, so no regrets. I understand." Grusha trailed her fingers in the cool water. "I regret trusting too easily, loving too quickly. But I do not regret leaving the clan. They were my family, but they would have made me kill to prove my worth. I could not do that, so here I am." "Here we are," Benedict corrected gently. She smiled at that, quick and warm. She smiled more often now, he had noticed. The wariness was fading from her eyes, replaced by something softer. He caught himself watching her sometimes, the way the firelight caught in her hair, the strength in her hands, the sound of her laugh when he said something unexpectedly funny. It was dangerous territory, and he knew it. They were partners, building something together. He would not risk that by pushing for more. She had been betrayed too recently, hurt too deeply. She needed safety and stability, not another human man making demands, so he kept his growing feelings to himself and focused on the work. 1 month after they had started, the cabin was finished. Tight and dry, with a good door and shutters on the window. The garden was growing, green shoots pushing up through the dark earth. The barn was half done but functional enough to shelter the 2 goats Benedict had bought from a farmer. They had a milk supply now, and Grusha proved talented at making cheese. They had also built a second room onto the cabin, expanding it with fresh logs. 2 rooms meant privacy, meant proper sleeping quarters instead of bedrolls by the fire. Benedict took the smaller room and gave Grusha the larger. She protested, but he insisted. You work as hard as I do. You deserve a real bed and space of your own. They built simple bed frames from poles and rope, filled thin mattresses with dried grass and moss. It was not luxury, but it was comfort they had both been lacking. That first night in her own room, her own bed, Grusha cried quietly into her folded arms. Cried for relief and gratitude and the simple, unexpected kindness of having a door she could close, a space that was hers. In the morning, she said nothing about it. But when she looked at Benedict over breakfast, the gratitude in her eyes was profound. The trouble they had been half expecting came on a hot afternoon in early summer. Benedict was working on the barn roof when he heard horses approaching. He climbed down quickly, reaching for the axe. Grusha appeared from the cabin, a long knife in her hand. 3 men rode into the clearing. Garrett was in the lead, looking haggard and mean. The 2 with him were cut from the same cloth, rough men with hard eyes and weapons on their belts. Well, well. Garrett's voice was slurred slightly. Drunk even now. Look at this. My orc bitch playing house with a cheater. You have no business here, Garrett, Benedict said calmly. Leave. I have business. That orc is mine. You cheated in that card game. Everyone knows it. I am taking what is mine. The game was fair and witnessed. You lost. Accept it and go. Garrett dismounted, swaying slightly. His friends followed. I do not think so. I think I am going to take my property back, and maybe teach you a lesson about respecting your betters. Benedict moved to put himself between Garrett and Grusha. She is not property. And you are not my better. Leave now and we will forget this happened. Brave words from 1 man against 3. Garrett's hand went to his knife. Last chance, boy. Give me the orc or we take her. Benedict felt the old familiar coldness settle over him, the battle calm he had learned in the wars. No. Garrett lunged. Benedict was ready, had been ready since he saw them coming. He sidestepped smoothly and brought the axe handle around in a short, brutal arc that caught Garrett in the ribs. The man went down with a whoosh of expelled air. The other 2 rushed him together. Benedict dropped the axe, too unwieldy in close quarters, and drew his knife. He had been fighting for his life since he was 16 years old. These were bullies and thugs, used to easy victories over frightened victims. They were not ready for what he was. Benedict moved like water, like smoke, the way his old sergeant had taught him. He parried a knife thrust, trapped the arm, and broke it with a sharp twist. The man screamed and fell away. The second swung wildly with a cudgel. Benedict ducked under it, came up inside the man's guard, and drove his knee into the man's groin. As he folded, Benedict's elbow caught him across the temple and he dropped. The whole thing took perhaps 15 seconds. Garrett was still wheezing on the ground. His 2 friends were down and not getting up. Benedict stood over them, breathing hard, knife steady in his hand. I said leave. His voice was quiet and absolutely cold. Do not come back. If you do, I will not be so gentle. Garrett stared up at him with wide eyes, all the bravado gone. He saw something in Benedict's face then, the soldier, the killer who had done things in the wars that would haunt him forever. Garrett scrambled backward, then lurched to his feet and ran for his horse. His friends followed, cradling their injuries. They rode away fast, not looking back. Benedict stood there for a long moment, the battle calm fading, leaving him shaky. He cleaned his knife and sheathed it, then turned to find Grusha watching him with wide eyes. You did not kill them, she said. Did not need to. Benedict rubbed his face tiredly. They were just drunk idiots. They will not be back. You could have. I saw how you moved. You are a trained killer. Was, Benedict corrected. I was a trained killer. Now I am just a farmer trying to mind his own business. He met her eyes. Does it frighten you, knowing what I was? Grusha considered this seriously. Then she shook her head. "No, it makes me feel safe. You could have killed them easily, but you chose mercy. That tells me more about who you are than the fact that you can fight." Something in Benedict's chest loosened. He had not realized how much her opinion mattered until that moment. "They might tell others, stir up trouble. Then we will face it." Grusha's smile was fierce. "Together, partners, partners," Benedict agreed, but no more trouble came. Word must have spread about what happened, because after that the few neighbors they encountered gave them a wide berth. Some with hostility, true, but most with a wary respect. The crazy human and his orc partner who just wanted to be left alone. Summer deepened. The garden flourished in the long, hot days. They harvested lettuce and radishes, the first fruits of their labor. Grusha's cheese was good enough that Benedict could trade it in town for things they needed. Salt and sugar, a proper cooking pot, lengths of cloth for clothes. They established a routine. Up at dawn, Benedict would tend the goats and work on whatever building project was current while Grusha managed the garden and the cooking. In the afternoons, they would work together on larger tasks, clearing more land, building furniture, repairing tools. Evenings were for rest, sitting outside the cabin and watching the sun set over the valley, talking about everything and nothing. Benedict was happier than he could remember being. The simple satisfaction of growing things, building things, making a home. And if he was honest with himself, it was more than that. It was Grusha. Her presence, her smile, the sound of her voice, the way she hummed while she worked, the fierce concentration on her face when she was solving a problem. The rare, soft look she gave him sometimes when she thought he was not watching. He was in love with her. The realization came one evening as he watched her braid her hair by the fire, her green fingers moving with practiced grace. He loved her strength and her vulnerability, her pride and her kindness. He loved the way she challenged him, the way she made him laugh, the way she saw the world, but he said nothing. She had been hurt before, betrayed by a human she trusted. He would not risk their partnership, their friendship, by asking for more than she was ready to give. If all he ever had was this, working beside her and building a life together as friends and partners, that would be enough. It would have to be enough. The harvest came in late summer, and it was better than they had dared hope. Squash and beans, turnips and carrots, more than they could eat. Benedict took the surplus to town and traded for winter supplies. Flour and dried meat, thick blankets, oil for the lamps. He also bought a cow, a gentle older creature that would provide milk and eventually calves. The merchant who sold him the cow was friendlier now, conversational. "Heard your harvest was good. People are talking, you know, saying maybe an orc and a human working together is not so strange after all." "We just farm," Benedict said. "Nothing strange about that, maybe, but you have got people thinking. There is a young man 2 valleys over has an orc working for him now, says if it is good enough for Benedict Norwood, it is good enough for him." The merchant grinned. "You are starting something, whether you mean to or not." Benedict was not sure how he felt about that. He had never set out to make a statement. He had just done what seemed right. But if it helped other orcs find safety and work, maybe that was not such a bad thing. When he returned to the valley with the cow, he found Grusha standing in the garden with a strange expression on her face. She was holding a handful of beans, staring at them like they were made of gold. "Grusha, what is wrong?" She looked up at him, and there were tears tracking down her green cheeks. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. Do you understand? This garden, this food, it is ours. We grew it. We earned it. No one can take it away. For the first time in my life, I have something that is mine. Really mine." Benedict crossed to her, his heart aching. Gently, carefully, he took the beans from her shaking hands and set them aside. Then, giving her every chance to pull away, he pulled her into a hug, She stiffened for a heartbeat, then collapsed against him, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her, one hand stroking her dark hair, murmuring wordless comfort. All the fear and pain and uncertainty she had been holding on to poured out in great wrenching sobs. When the storm finally passed, she pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I am sorry. I do not usually fall apart like that. You have earned the right." Benedict kept his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You have been so strong, Grusha, but you do not always have to be, not here, not with me." She looked up at him, her amber eyes still wet with tears. "Why are you so kind to me?" "What do you want from me?" "I want you to be happy," Benedict said simply. "I want you to be safe. I want you to have the life you deserve. That is all. That is all." Her voice was almost a whisper. Benedict realized they were standing very close. He could see the flecks of darker amber in her eyes, could feel her breath against his skin. It would be so easy to close the distance to kiss her. But he did not. He stepped back, releasing her shoulders. "That is all," he said firmly. "You are my partner and my friend. I will never ask you for more than you want to give." Something complicated crossed Grusha's face. Then she nodded slowly. "Thank you for everything." The moment passed and they went back to work, but something had shifted between them, subtle but profound. Grusha watched him more openly now, smiled more often, found excuses to work near him, their shoulders brushing as they passed. Benedict noticed and ached and said nothing. Autumn came in a rush of golden leaves and crisp mornings. They spent long days preparing for winter, cutting and stacking firewood, preserving food, making repairs to the cabin and barn. Benedict built a proper chicken coop and bought 6 hens. Fresh eggs were a luxury that made Grusha laugh with delight. One cool evening in late autumn, they sat by the fire after supper. Benedict was mending a harness while Grusha worked on sewing a new shirt from the cloth he had traded for. The domesticity of it struck him suddenly. The two of them in comfortable silence, working on small tasks, the fire crackling, the animals bedded down outside. This was what he had been looking for without knowing it. Not just land or a home, but this. Someone to share it with. Benedict. Grusha's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "That human woman in town, the one who runs the bakery. She watches you when you come in. I think she likes you." Benedict blinked, surprised. Sarah Roberts, the baker's daughter. She was pretty enough, always friendly. He had never given her much thought. "I had not noticed." "Well, she does, and she is human. It would be easier for you if you wanted. A human wife, human children. You would not face the prejudice you face with me." "Is that what you think?" Benedict set down the harness. "That I want easier. I think you deserve easier. You are a good man, Benedict. You should have a good life." "I have a good life, here with you." He met her eyes across the fire. "Grusha, I do not want easier. I do not want that baker's daughter, kind as she may be. I want this. Our farm, our partnership. I want to keep building this life together. Unless," his chest tightened, "unless you are trying to tell me you want me to leave, that you want the land for yourself. Because if that is what you want, I will go. I would never force my presence on you." "No," Grusha stood abruptly. "No, that is not what I meant at all. I thought." She made a frustrated sound. "Human men do not stay with orc women. They use us and leave like that traitor left me. I thought when you realized how hard this would be, the prejudice and the difficulty, you would want someone easier, someone human." "I am not that traitor." Benedict stood too cross to her. "I am not going anywhere, Grusha. I made you a promise. Partners. Equal shares." "I meant it then and I mean it now." "Partners," she repeated, her voice shook slightly. "Is that all you want to be?" The question hung in the air between them. Benedict's heart was pounding. This was the moment. He could play it safe, could pretend not to understand. Or he could be honest, could risk everything they had built on the chance of something more. "No," he said quietly. "That is not all I want, but I will not ask for more than you are willing to give. Your friendship, your partnership, that is enough. It has to be enough." "And if I want to give more?" Grusha's amber eyes were very bright. "If I want more too," Benedict's breath caught. "Do you?" "I am afraid," she whispered. "I was hurt before. I trusted before and it destroyed me. What if this is the same? What if you realize I am just an orc, just a savage, and you leave?" "Grusha." Benedict reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her green cheek in his hand. "You are the bravest, strongest, kindest person I have ever met. You are beautiful and clever, and you make me want to be a better man. I am not going anywhere, ever, not unless you send me away." "You think I am beautiful?" Her voice was wondering. "So beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes." She laughed, a shaky, breathless sound. "You are mad. Humans do not find orcs beautiful. This one does. This one finds you perfect." Benedict stroked his thumb across her cheekbone, marveling at the softness of her skin. "I love you, Grusha. I have loved you for months. I tried not to. Tried to be content with friendship, but I cannot help it. I love you." Tears spilled down her cheeks again, but she was smiling. "I love you too. I think I have since the moment you tore up that paper and told me to go where I pleased. No one had ever given me a choice before. No one had ever treated me like a person. And you did, without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. How could I not love you?" Benedict's heart felt too large for his chest. "Can I kiss you, please?" He leaned in slowly, carefully, and pressed his lips to hers. She tasted like the honey from their hives and the wild mint that grew by the creek. Her tusks pressed gently against his lips, unfamiliar but not unpleasant. She made a small sound, and her hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, months of restrained longing pouring out. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grusha laughed again. "That was worth waiting for," she said. "We can keep waiting," Benedict said. "There is no rush. I want to do this right, court you properly. Court me." Grusha raised an eyebrow. "We live together, we work together every day. I think we are past courting." "Maybe, but you deserve romance. You deserve to be wooed." Benedict grinned. "Let me try, please." "You are strange," Grusha said, but she was smiling. "Fine, court me, woo me. I will try not to make it too easy for you." And so began the strangest and sweetest courtship Benedict had ever imagined. They still worked together every day, still shared meals and chores and the running of the farm. But now Benedict left little gifts for her. Wildflowers on her pillow, a carved wooden comb, a jar of honey with her name marked in charcoal. Grusha responded in kind, making his favorite foods, mending his clothes with careful stitches, writing him notes in her careful blocky handwriting and leaving them in unexpected places. They held hands while they walked to check the trap lines, stole kisses when they passed each other in the cabin, sat close by the fire at night, her head on his shoulder, talking about their dreams for the future. One night, Grusha asked, "Do you want children?" "Human men usually do." Benedict considered this. "Someday, perhaps, if it happened. But I do not need them to be happy. You are enough. This life is enough. What about you?" "I always thought I would have children. It is expected in orc clans. But now I do not know. Would they be accepted?" Half-orc children face prejudice from both sides. "I would not want to bring a child into that. If we have children, they will be loved," Benedict said firmly. "And we will raise them to be strong enough to face whatever the world throws at them. But Grusha, that is a tomorrow problem. Today I just want you, however you come. Whatever that means." She kissed him then, deep and sweet. "I do not deserve you. You deserve the world. I am just the lucky fool who gets to give it to you." Winter came early and hard that year. The snow started in late autumn and did not stop. They woke one morning to find the valley transformed into a white wonderland. everything silent and pristine. They had prepared well, and the cabin was tight and warm. They had food enough for themselves and the animals, firewood stacked high and each other. The deep snows meant they could not get to town, could not work outside much. They were trapped together in close quarters for weeks at a time. It was perfect. They spent the long winter evenings by the fire, talking and laughing and learning each other. Grusha taught Benedict words in the orc tongue. He taught her to read better, working through the few books he owned. They played simple games, told stories, made plans for spring, and at night they slept in their separate rooms, the doors open, listening to each other breathe, waiting. The desire was there, burning hot, but they were taking their time, building something that would last. One particularly brutal storm trapped them inside for 3 days straight. The wind howled and the snow piled high against the door. They kept the fire burning and rationed their food and told each other every story they could remember. On the third night, huddled close for warmth, Grusha said, "If we died here, if the cabin collapsed or we froze, I would die happy. Because I had this. I had you. I had a home. That is more than I ever dreamed of." "We are not going to die," Benedict said, "but I understand what you mean. Whatever happens, we had this. No one can take that from us." The storm broke on the 4th day. They dug their way out into brilliant sunshine and a world remade in ice and snow. The animals were fine, huddled in the barn. The cabin had held. They had survived. They celebrated by making snow angels in the meadow, laughing like children, pelting each other with snowballs. Then they went inside and heated water for a rare bath, taking turns in the wooden tub by the fire. It felt like the greatest luxury in the world. That night, wrapped in blankets and drowsing by the fire, Grusha said sleepily, "Marry me." Benedict's eyes flew open. "What? Marry me? I know it is not legal. No human settlement will recognize a marriage between a human and an orc. But I do not care about legal. I want to make promises to you. I want you to make promises to me. I want to be yours and you to be mine. So marry me." Benedict's throat was tight. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." "Good," she yawned. "Tomorrow, then, we will figure out how." True to her word, Grusha woke with a plan. If no human would marry them, they would marry themselves. They would make vows to each other before whatever gods or spirits might be listening, and that would be enough. They prepared carefully. Grusha wove a crown from pine boughs and winter berries. Benedict carved 2 simple wooden rings, working late into the night to get them perfect. They both bathed and dressed in their best clothes. Grusha in the dress she had made from the cloth Benedict bought, him in his cleanest shirt and pants. On a bright cold morning in midwinter, they walked to the highest point of their valley, where they could see for miles in every direction. The world was white and still, the only sound the wind in the trees and the distant call of a raven. They stood facing each other, hands clasped, breath steaming in the cold air. Benedict spoke first, the words coming from his heart. "Grusha, from the moment I met you, you changed my life. You made me want to be better. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to build something instead of just tearing things down. I promise to stand beside you, to work with you, to protect you and provide for you to the best of my ability. I promise to love you in plenty and in want, in health and in sickness, in joy and in sorrow. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your lover, and your husband until the day I die. This I swear." He slipped the wooden ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Grusha's voice shook, but her eyes were steady. "Benedict, you gave me freedom when I had none. You gave me choices when everyone else only gave me chains. You treated me like a person when the world called me a monster. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. I promise to stand beside you, to work with you, to be your shelter in the storm and your comfort in the night. I promise to love you with all that I am, to be faithful and true, to build this life with you and face whatever comes together. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your lover, and your wife until the day I die. This I swear." She slipped the other ring onto his finger. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the promises settling around them. Then Benedict leaned forward and kissed her, gentle and reverent. His wife. Grusha kissed him back, her arms wrapping around his neck, and it felt like coming home. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too, husband." The words sent a thrill through him. They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, and when they went inside, Grusha did not go to her room. She came to his. And that night, finally, they became husband and wife in every sense, learning each other with gentle hands and whispered endearments, taking their time and finding joy in every discovery. Afterward, lying tangled together in the narrow bed, Grusha said, "I never thought I could be this happy. I never thought anyone would love me like this." "Get used to it," Benedict said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You are stuck with me now." "Good," she said, and fell asleep with her head on his chest, a smile on her face. Winter slowly gave way to spring. The snow melted, the creek ran high with runoff, and the valley came back to life. Benedict and Grusha emerged from their winter cocoon ready to work. They expanded the garden, planting twice as much as the year before. They repaired the barn and built a proper chicken house. Benedict took on odd jobs in the area, his reputation as a hard worker spreading. Grusha's cheese became sought after in town, traded for good prices. People were still wary of their relationship, but the open hostility faded. They were just Benedict and Grusha now, the couple on the eastern border who kept to themselves and did good work. Some people even started to respect them. One day in early spring, a young orc woman appeared at their door. She was thin and frightened, with a black eye and rope burns on her wrists. "Please," she said in halting human tongue. "I heard there is a human here who helps orcs, who freed an orc woman. I need help, need safe place." Grusha and Benedict exchanged glances, then Grusha stepped forward. "You are safe here, come in. What is your name, Karga?" They fed her, tended her injuries, and listened to her story. She had been captured by slavers, escaped, and run for days. She had nowhere to go, no clan to return to. "Stay here," Grusha said firmly. "We have room in the barn, we can make you a space. You can help with the work, earn your keep. You will be safe." Karga stared at them with wide eyes. "You would do that, for a stranger?" "Someone helped me once," Grusha said, glancing at Benedict. "I am just paying it forward." Karga stayed. They fixed up a corner of the barn for her, gave her blankets and her own space. She was a hard worker, eager to please and pathetically grateful for every kindness. Slowly, over weeks, she relaxed, started to smile, started to believe she was truly safe. A month later, another orc appeared. Then a human woman fleeing an abusive husband. Then an elderly human man who had lost his farm and had nowhere to go. One by one, people who needed help found their way to the little valley on the eastern border. Benedict and Grusha took them all in. They expanded the barn, built small cabins, created a community of misfits and castaways. It was not easy. There were fights and disagreements and growing pains. But slowly, carefully, they built something new. A place where humans and orcs worked side by side, where the only thing that mattered was the work you did and the kindness you showed. They called it Haven, though they never meant for the name to stick. It was just what people started calling it. Haven, the place where Benedict Norwood and his orc wife would take in anyone who needed help. 2 years after that first winter, Grusha discovered she was pregnant. She told Benedict one evening as they sat watching the sunset over their valley, now dotted with small cabins and worked fields. "Are you afraid?" she asked, her hand on her still flat belly. "Terrified," Benedict admitted, but also excited. We will figure it out together, we always do. Their daughter was born in the early spring, a healthy baby with green skin, a shade lighter than Grusha's and Benedict's gray eyes. She had tiny tusks just barely visible and a shock of black hair. They named her Ada after Benedict's mother. The community celebrated the birth, human and orc alike coming together to welcome the baby. She was the first child born in Haven, and she represented hope, proof that different peoples could not just coexist but thrive together. Ada grew up surrounded by love, learning orc traditions from her mother and human customs from her father. She was strong and clever and fierce, loved by everyone in Haven. She would never face the loneliness or rejection her parents had known. She had a whole community that claimed her. Over the years, Haven grew. More people came, drawn by stories of the place where humans and orcs lived in peace. They built a proper meeting hall, a shared kitchen, a small school. They established trade routes with nearby settlements. They became known as a place of safety and fairness. Benedict and Grusha watched it all with pride and wonder. They had just wanted a quiet life on a small farm. Instead, they had started something that changed the frontier. But their favorite times were still the quiet evenings, just the two of them sitting on the porch of their cabin, watching Ada play with the other children, the valley spread out before them in the golden light. You ever regret it? Grusha asked one such evening, her head on Benedict's shoulder. Tearing up that paper, you could have sold me, made a profit. Instead, you built all this. Benedict pressed a kiss to her temple. I have never regretted anything less. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything good in my life started the moment I tore up that contract and saw you smile. I did not smile. I was too shocked. You smiled later, and I have spent every day since trying to earn that smile. Benedict laced his fingers through hers, their wooden rings clicking together gently. I love you, Grusha Norwood. I love you too, Benedict Norwood, my savior, my partner, my husband. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set and the first stars appeared. Inside the cabin, Ada was singing a lullaby Grusha had taught her, a blend of orc and human words. Around them, Haven settled in for the night, smoke rising from chimneys, voices calling good night. Benedict thought back to that night in the tavern, to the moment he decided to buy into that card game. He had been a drifter then, a man with no roots and no purpose. Now he had everything. A home. A family. A community. A future. All because he had looked at a young orc woman with amber eyes and seen not property but a person. Not a thing to be owned but a partner to build a life with. Sometimes the best things in life came not from what you gained, but from what you gave away. He had given Grusha her freedom. In return, she had given him a reason to live. That seemed like a fair trade. Years continued to pass in Haven, each one building on the last. Ada grew into a strong young woman, as fierce and kind as her mother, as steady and thoughtful as her father. She was not the only half-orc child in Haven anymore. Other human-orc couples had formed, inspired by Benedict and Grusha's example. The community was truly becoming a blend of both peoples. On their 10th anniversary, Benedict surprised Grusha with a gift. He had been working on it in secret for months, stealing hours here and there. It was a book, handwritten and illustrated, telling their story. From the card game to their first winter to the founding of Haven. Grusha read it by the fire, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she looked up at him with shining eyes. This is beautiful, but you made yourself too noble. You were just a man in a tavern. I was a fool in a tavern who got lucky, Benedict corrected. The noble one was you. You could have run that first night. Could have left and never looked back, but you stayed. You trusted me. You built this with me. We built it together, Grusha said firmly. She set the book aside carefully and pulled him into a kiss. Always together. Always, Benedict agreed. That night, lying in bed, Grusha said, I want to do something for our anniversary. What? I want to go back to the Iron Ridge clan. I want to show them what I have built. Show them that leaving was not a mistake, that I found a better family than the one that cast me out. Benedict was quiet for a long moment. Are you sure they hurt you, Grusha? They made you choose between love and belonging. I do not want you hurt again. I am sure. I need to face them, not for them but for me. I need them to see that I am happy, that I survived, that I thrived. She took his hand. Will you come with me? Of course. Wherever you go, I go, you know that. They made the journey north a month later, leaving Ada in the care of Karga and the other residents of Haven. The trip took 2 weeks, through forests and over mountains, following Grusha's half-forgotten memories. When they finally reached the territory of the Iron Ridge clan, they were stopped by orc scouts. Grusha identified herself, and after some debate, they were escorted to the clan's settlement. It was larger than Benedict had imagined, a sprawling village of sturdy buildings set into the mountainside. Orcs stopped to stare as they passed, their eyes hostile. A human in their territory was unusual. A human with Grusha was unthinkable. They were brought before the clan chief, a massive orc woman with graying hair and scars that spoke of many battles. She studied Grusha with hard eyes. So, the traitor returns. Grusha straightened her shoulders. I am no traitor. I chose love over murder. If that is treason, I am guilty and proud. You chose a human over your clan. You shamed us. No, you shamed yourselves by demanding I kill an innocent man to prove my loyalty. I found a better way, a better life. Grusha gestured to Benedict. This is my husband, Benedict Norwood. We have built a community together, a place where humans and orcs live in peace. We have a daughter. We have a good life. I came here to tell you that I forgive you for casting me out, because if you had not, I would never have found my true home. The chief's expression did not change. You think we want your forgiveness. You are nothing to us. Then why do you look so angry? Grusha asked softly. If I am nothing, if my choice meant nothing, why does my presence here upset you so much? Silence fell. Then, from the back of the gathered crowd, an older orc woman stepped forward. She had Grusha's eyes, her build. Mother, Grusha whispered. Her mother crossed to her slowly. For a long moment she just looked at Grusha. Then she reached out and touched her daughter's face, gentle as falling snow. I have regretted that day every moment since, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But the clan law was clear. I could not stop it. I am so sorry, daughter, so very sorry. Grusha's composure broke. She fell into her mother's arms, sobbing. Her mother held her tight, rocking slightly, murmuring in the orc tongue. Benedict watched with his own eyes stinging. He had not known what to expect from this visit, but this raw emotion, this healing of old wounds, was more than he had hoped for. When Grusha finally pulled back, her mother looked at Benedict. You are the human who married my daughter. I am. You have treated her well, made her happy. I have tried my best to make her happy every day, Benedict said honestly. She is the center of my world. I love her more than I can say. Grusha's mother studied him for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, she bowed her head slightly. Then I thank you for loving my daughter when I failed her, for giving her the life she deserved. The clan chief made an angry sound, but Grusha's mother rounded on her. Enough, Varka. The old ways are not always the right ways. My daughter has proven that. She built something beautiful from the ashes of our rejection. We should be proud, not bitter. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some angry, some thoughtful. Change was never easy, especially for traditions that ran deep. But a seed had been planted. Grusha and Benedict stayed for 3 days, telling stories of Haven, of the community they had built. Some of the younger orcs listened with bright, interested eyes. A few even asked questions about how to start similar communities. When they left, Grusha's mother walked them to the border of clan territory. She embraced her daughter one last time. "Come back," she said. "Bring your daughter. Let me know my granddaughter." "I will," Grusha promised. "We will visit. And mother, you are always welcome in Haven. Always." Her mother smiled through tears. "I may take you up on that. I am tired of the cold mountains. A valley farm sounds peaceful." They parted with promises to write, to visit, to rebuild what had been broken. On the journey home, Grusha was quieter than usual. Benedict gave her space to process, just held her hand and walked beside her. Finally, as they crested the last hill before their valley came into view, she spoke. "Thank you for coming with me, for supporting me." "Always," Benedict said simply. "I needed to face them, to prove to myself that I had moved on, that I was happy." She stopped, turned to face him fully. "And I am happy, Benedict. Happier than I ever thought possible. That clan, those mountains, they were my home once. But Haven is my home now. You are my home." Benedict pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You are my home too. You and Ada and Haven and all of it. Everything good in my life comes back to you." They stood there on the hillside, holding each other, the valley spread out below. They could see the patchwork of fields, the cluster of buildings, the thin trails of smoke rising from chimneys. Could see Ada playing in the yard with the other children, tiny even from this distance. Home. They walked down into the valley together, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. Because they had each other, and that was enough. It would always be enough. The years that followed brought changes, as years do. Haven continued to grow, attracting more people seeking refuge or a new start. They built a proper mill, a smithy, even a small inn for travelers. Trade routes expanded, and Haven became known throughout the frontier as a place of fairness and opportunity. Ada grew up and fell in love with a young human man who had come to Haven as an orphan. They married in a ceremony that blended human and orc traditions. And soon Benedict and Grusha were grandparents to a rambunctious boy with green-tinted skin and his grandfather's gray eyes. Grusha's mother eventually made good on her promise and came to live in Haven, along with a handful of other orcs from the Iron Ridge clan who were tired of the harsh mountain life and drawn by stories of the community Grusha had built. The clan chief never forgave what she saw as betrayal, but enough of the clan drifted away to Haven that eventually new leadership emerged, younger orcs who were more open to change. Benedict and Grusha watched it all with quiet pride. They had not set out to change the world. They had just wanted to live their lives in peace, to build something good together. But sometimes that was enough. Sometimes small acts of kindness rippled outward in ways you could never predict. On warm summer evenings, they still sat on their porch, now weathered and comfortable with age. They were older now, Benedict's hair more gray than brown, Grusha moving a bit slower from old injuries and hard work. But they were together, and that made everything worthwhile. "You remember that night in the tavern?" Grusha asked one such evening, her hand in Benedict's. "The card game." "Every detail," Benedict said. "The smell of old beer, the way you stood so still like a statue, the look on Garrett's face when I laid down that full house." "What made you do it? Buy into the game?" Benedict considered the question. He had asked himself the same thing 1,000 times over the years. "I saw you standing there, bound and silent, and I saw something in your eyes, a spark that had not gone out despite everything. I thought if someone could hold onto that spark in such darkness, they deserved a chance. So I gambled on you, best bet I ever made. You gave me my life back that night," Grusha said softly, Everything I am, everything I have, it started with you tearing up that paper and telling me I was free." "No," Benedict corrected gently. "I gave you a chance, you did the rest. You chose to stay. You chose to work with me. You chose to love me. You chose to build Haven. I just opened a door. You walked through it and created something beautiful." Grusha smiled, the expression still capable of making Benedict's heart skip after all these years. "We created something beautiful, together." "Together," Benedict agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set in shades of gold and crimson. Around them, Haven settled into evening routines, children being called in for supper, animals being bedded down, neighbors calling goodnight to each other in a mixture of human tongue and orc dialect. Benedict thought about the path that had led him here, from that violent childhood in a fishing village to the brutal years as a mercenary to a tavern on the frontier where he won a card game and found his future. It had been a strange journey, full of pain and blood and regret. But it had all been worth it. Every scar, every nightmare, every hard choice. Because it led him here to this moment, to this woman, to this life. Grusha leaned her head on his shoulder and Benedict wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. They watched the first stars appear in the deepening twilight, the valley quiet and peaceful below them. This was happiness, Benedict realized. Not grand gestures or dramatic moments, but this. The simple comfort of sitting beside the person you loved, watching the day end, knowing you would wake up tomorrow and do it all again. He had won Grusha in a card game all those years ago. Then he had torn up the paper and told her to go where she pleased. She had chosen to stay. And in staying, she had given him everything. It was enough. It would always be enough. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Benedict and Grusha remained on their porch, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a life that mattered. Around them, Haven thrived, a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of partnership, and the simple revolutionary act of seeing another person's humanity. They had started with nothing but hope in each other. They had built a legacy that would outlive them both. And it all began the moment a weary mercenary looked at a captive orc woman and chose to see not property but possibility. Not a prize to claim, but a person to cherish. Love, Benedict had learned, was not about possession. It was about liberation. It was about giving someone the freedom to choose, and then being grateful beyond measure when they chose you. He had given Grusha her freedom. She had given him a reason to live. That was the best trade he had ever made, and he would make it again 1,000 times over. The story of Benedict and Grusha became legend in the years that followed, told and retold until it was hard to separate fact from fiction. But the truth was simple and profound. Two people who should never have met, who came from different worlds and faced impossible odds, found each other and built something that lasted. They lived long lives, surrounded by family and community, secure in the knowledge that they had made a difference. And when they were very old, they passed peacefully within days of each other, still holding hands, still together. Haven endured long after they were gone, a living memorial to their vision. And every person who came seeking refuge, every mixed couple who dared to love across divides, every child born to a heritage that blended traditions, stood as proof that Benedict and Grusha's choice mattered. In the end, the greatest legacy is not in grand monuments or remembered names. It is in the lives you touch, the kindness you show, and the love you share. Benedict Norwood and Grusha built that legacy together, one choice at a time, starting with a torn piece of paper and an offer of freedom. And they lived happily ever after, not because life was always easy, but because they faced it together, as partners, as equals, as husband and wife. That was enough. It would always be enough.